Hi, I wanted to make a video for all the people who have written and asked for specific information on how to work on either cutting back or quitting gaming after they've decided that they have a problem with overplaying. We made a series, and by we I mean my husband and I, made a series of videos about 2 years ago on gaming addiction and tried to cover that issue pretty comprehensively. There's 4 videos here on YouTube, and I would suggest starting by watching those. They're each about 5 minutes long, so it takes a time commitment to watch them. But I really think people should start with that and get lots of basic information, and particularly not write comments until they've watched them, because some of the comments that come in paint me as if I'm Jack Thompson or something, and clearly I'm not. I still play games, and my husband plays games, my sons play games, but we play in a very controlled, balanced manner, and I think it is possible to do that. The problem with trying to give generic information on how to manage your gameplay is that everybody is so different, and people are playing for different reasons. Often people write and say, I just play for fun. Well, obviously everybody plays for fun. That's why we do most of the things we do. It's fun. But fun means different things to different people. Sometimes people have very boring lives, and gaming is about the only fun that they have because they don't have many other opportunities. Sometimes fun is actually something that rescues people from depression, anxiety, family problems, all kinds of motivations. Some people just like the sense of achievement and accomplishment because it's something that they're really good at, and maybe there aren't a lot of other things in life that they've felt successful in. I don't like to tell people right off the bat, see a counselor, but sometimes that's what's necessary, to find somebody that you can really talk to, especially if people do find that when they try to cut back on their playing or stop playing altogether, they're just not successful and they become very uncomfortable. Some people do tend to have withdrawal symptoms from trying to stop playing. Is to decide on what your goals and your values really are. And that's something that develops over time. Most of us don't know this right off the bat. We have to think about it, and it evolves and changes as we get older. But sometimes there's a discrepancy between where we're at and where we want to be. And I know in my own life, when I was playing MMOs, and got caught up in spending hours and hours and hours in that world, I was letting go of my real life friends and real life activities that had kept me as a fairly happy, balanced person, and I became so immersed in the virtual world that my life wasn't what I had wanted it to be. So I realized that because of some rather traumatic events that happened in my life. There was a death in my immediate family, and it caused me to reevaluate what am I doing with my time, and is this really where I want to be in life? So if you start out by looking at that and by writing down maybe what your goals are, where you'd like to be in a month, where you'd like to be in a year, where you'd like to be in 5 years, and is the gaming getting in the way of that? I think writing it down and putting it out where you can look at it and read it and setting your goals specifically is really helpful. Most people also have a preparation phase where they're not really ready to quit, but they're thinking about quitting a lot. And it's also good to explore the good things about gaming and the not so good things about gaming. And you can kind of see how this all kind of glides together in this change process, because most people don't just get up one day and make dramatic changes out of nowhere. Usually there's a process that's going on. So listing the good things about gaming, which there are many. As I say, it can be fun, it can change mood, it can be a way to not be bored, it can be a way to feel successful, making friends online. Those social relationships can be very important, but listing the not so good things too, and those are different for everybody. But I think it's important to set a date once you decide that you want to quit. And it doesn't have to be immediately, but at some time in the future. as you make your preparations, to have in mind when you want that to be, and to let other people know so you have support around you from other people who are encouraging you. So sometimes that's tricky. Sometimes not everybody has a good support system, and it takes some work to find friends who will be supportive and who understand what you're talking about, because if people haven't been gamers, they generally don't get it, and they don't have a lot of empathy. They just say, just stop, and it's not that easy to just stop. If that were true, the world would be a completely different place if people could just stop destructive behaviors just because they wanted to. Once a date has been set, it's really important that you have very specific goals about how you're going to use your time. And by specific goals, I mean hour by hour, what you're going to be doing. Because if you've been gaming for 8 hours a day, 12 hours a day or more, you have an awful lot of free time, and you have to know what you're going to do with it. If you notice, I'm not going back to the word addiction. That's because that's such a word that gets people fired up. And as I've said before, it doesn't really matter whether you call it addiction or whether you call it overplaying or compulsive playing. If you're playing too much, it's the same process for changing a pattern, whatever you call it. So writing down the time that you're going to be spend doing activities. Social activities with other people are really important, and sometimes that takes some work. Finding people to do things with, because you may have become isolated from real world friends. It may be hard to find things that feel fun, and that takes some work too, and there are some biochemical processes happening. Activities that are physical, that get you outdoors, are really good for the brain and the body, and changing the pattern that you've gotten those neural pathways stuck in. And staying away from the computer is probably a really good thing to do. And that's sometimes difficult, especially if you work around computers or have lots of other online activities. I'm smiling because I do too, have lots of online activities. And it's difficult for me to stay off the computer. So before you delete your characters and uninstall the game, you have to make a lot of other preparations in order to make that happen. So planning other activities, not having free time that's unscheduled. You know, you have to have time that's not stressful, and all of it should be enjoyable, because bottom line, if real life isn't more fulfilling and more fun and more interesting than game life, people are always going to want to be going back to the game. That's just the way we are. We have to have interests. We have to have things that make us feel good, things that are relaxing, things that are exciting, and that has to come from a full life. That I'm not judging anyone. I'm not telling anyone they're gaming too much. I'm not telling people to quit gaming. That's really an individual decision that everyone has to make for themselves. And the only reason I'm making this videos and addressing this issue at all is because people write me and say, hey, I have a game addiction and I need help. What do I do? And sometimes their lives have gotten really out of control and really messed up because of it. And as a therapist and as a person who's had the same problem, I think I have a little bit of insight into it, and I hope it's helpful to people. So thanks for watching. I welcome your comments.